All right, welcome back everyone for another deep dive. Today we're going to be talking about something, well, a little unnerving, but also super important: street frauds.
Yeah, and we really want to equip you with the knowledge to identify and avoid these scams because, let's face it, in today's world, anyone can be a victim.
Exactly. And for this deep dive, we've got tons of research, case studies, stories, the whole 9 yards. And I'm really curious to get into it.
Absolutely. And one thing that makes street frogs so fascinating and scary is that it really preys on, basic human psychology, you know?
Oh, totally.
Like, we're wired to trust, to look for opportunities, and sometimes that can make us a bit vulnerable.
Yeah, for sure. So let's start with something that I always find so intriguing: Ponzi schemes. How do they manage to go on for so long? It's wild.
It's all about creating an illusion, you know? A Ponzi scheme, they'll promise you these crazy high returns,
Right.
but those returns, they're actually just coming from new investors.
Oh, wow.
It's basically a financial game of musical chairs. And when the music stops, well, there's not enough to go around.
Yeah, someone's left standing, right.
Yeah, exactly. The math just doesn't work. It's a ticking time bomb, really.
And we've seen those bombs explode, right? Like Bernie Madoff, that whole thing.
Yeah.
It's insane how so many people, even experienced investors, got caught up in that.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to the power of what we call social proof. When you see other people seemingly getting rich, it's easy to get swept up in the excitement.
Oh, absolutely. The fear of missing out, right?
Exactly. But with a Ponzi scheme, those early winners, they're just the lucky ones who cashed out before the whole thing collapsed.
Oh, wow. So they're just lucky, not smart.
Well, a bit of both, maybe. But it shows how important it is to be able to separate, legitimate investments from these super elaborate scams.
Totally, totally. Speaking of scams, let's move on to pyramid schemes. Are they kind of similar to Ponzi schemes?
Yeah, they share some similarities, definitely. But the real defining feature of a pyramid scheme is recruitment.
Ah, okay, yeah. It's like that classic get-rich-quick thing where you got to rope in all your friends and family. It's crazy to me that these schemes still work, you know?
Yeah.
Like, haven't we all heard the horror stories?
It's true, but you got to remember, they exploit our personal connections, our trust in people we know.
That's true, yeah.
It's way harder to say no to someone you know, especially if they genuinely believe in what they're selling.
Right. It almost feels like a betrayal sometimes.
Exactly. Plus, who can resist the idea of easy money? It can really cloud our judgment.
For sure. So it sounds like being cautious and doing your research is key, no matter who's presenting the opportunity. Now, we've talked about Ponzi schemes, pyramid schemes, which rely a lot on face-to-face interaction, right? But with the digital age, there's a whole new world of scams out there, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. Identity theft is, I'd say it's the perfect example of that. It preys on our reliance on the internet and online transactions.
It's true. Feels like every day there's news of another data breach or something. So for someone who might not be super tech savvy, what are some red flags to watch out for?
Well, first off, always be super careful with those phishing emails or suspicious links. They can look so real, even imitating official websites and brands, but their whole purpose is to trick you into giving away your info.
Yeah, you hear about those all the time.
Yeah.
And then, I've seen those fake online quizzes and surveys that ask for all your personal details.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And it's important to remember that this doesn't just happen online.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Those skimming devices they put on ATMs or card readers, that can steal your info offline, too.
Oh, wow. So being careful with your physical cards is still important.
Yeah, definitely. Being vigilant at those point-of-sale terminals, it's crucial.
So basically, we have to be careful both online and offline. What are some steps people can take to protect their identity?
So one of the biggest things is using strong, unique passwords for every single account. And enabling two-factor authentication, that can add an extra layer of security. And it's also a good idea to regularly check your bank statements and credit card statements, just to make sure there's no strange activity.
Yeah, those are great tips.
Yeah.
So apart from identity theft, what other street frauds should people be aware of?
Well, there are, unfortunately, a lot.
Yeah.
One is credit card fraud, which is, where someone steals your card information and uses it to buy stuff. Then there's advance fee fraud, where someone promises you something valuable, like a loan or a prize, but you got to pay a fee up front. And of course, that valuable thing never actually shows up.
Oh, yeah. Like that old saying, if it sounds too good to be true.
Exactly. And then there are scams that prey on people's generosity, like fake charities.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, these charities often pop up after natural disasters or during some kind of crisis, when people are feeling more generous.
It's terrible that people would exploit those situations.
It is, yeah.
I remember reading about a woman who lost her entire life savings to a fake investment scheme. It was supposed to fund some revolutionary cancer treatment, but it was all a lie. It's just heartbreaking how scammers prey on hope and desperation like that.
It is. And then you also have things like employment scams.
Employment scam.
Yeah. So you think you're getting a real job, but it's just a way to steal your money or personal information. And we can't forget about romance scams, where con artists build online relationships to manipulate people into sending them money.
It's crazy how these scammers tap into, like, the full spectrum of human emotions,
Right.
Greed, hope, loneliness, fear. It's really disturbing.
Yeah, it is. And that's exactly why it's so important to be informed about these tactics. Like, knowledge is power in this situation, for sure.
Totally. So as we wrap up our deep dive on street frauds, what's the one key takeaway you want our listeners to remember?
I'd say the most important thing is if something seems too good to be true, it probably is. Trust your gut, do your research, ask questions. If something feels off, it probably is.
Yeah, that's a good rule of thumb for, honestly, almost anything in life. So, to everyone listening, next time you come across a really tempting offer or a request that seems unusual, remember what we've talked about today. Stay informed, stay vigilant, and don't let the scammers win. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.